What's up everybody, welcome back. In today's video I want to take a look at adding a scoped weapon, so we can add something like a sniper rifle, and if we ADS we get a nice zoomed in view. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do today. If you like this series, please consider leaving a like, and if you want to get the project files for yourself, you can become a YouTube member or a Patreon, and then you will get access to premium channels in the Discord and also a download for the project. So let's start today's video and let's add a sniper rifle. So first of all, we need a weapon mesh, obviously. So for the people that are a member of the channel or a Patreon, you can grab the Lyra sniper rifle from the Discord with some HUD icons and stuff like that. And there's also an SMG and an LMG and a pistol that I made. So I'm not really good at modeling, but at least there's some different weapons in here you can use. Obviously, you can use any other weapon as well. So you want a mesh, and then for the overlay, we also need an image. So I'm a little bit better at coming up with code than actually making images in Photoshop or things like that. So this is simply a border that I'm using to cover up the edge of the scope. So you kind of want this to be a fancy image of the actual scope, but I don't have that. So for now, I'm going to use this as a placeholder. And then we need a render target to actually make our scope. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to right click. And then we want to go to texture over here. And under texture, we can select the render target. So you want this one. And we're gonna name this one texture render target and then sniper scope. And we want to open this up. So in here, all we want to do is adjust the size basically. So this will be the size of the actual scope on the screen. So for my case, I'm gonna set it to 1000 width and then a height of 750. And that's all we need to do in here. So we can close it down. Let's save it and get rid of it. Now we also need a material. So I'm going to right click again and then create a new material. This is going to be the material render target sniper scope. And we want to open this up. So first of all, let's select this node over here. And then we want to set it to the material domain over here. That's going to be user interface, and then the blend mode is going to be translucent. So those two settings need to be applied. Then we can grab our texture, so the render target sniper scope, and we can drag it in here. So what we want to do in here, simply hook up the RGB to the final color, and then for the opacity we need to grab the alpha channel over here and do 1-. So this will multiply it with -1, and then we can hook it up to the opacity channel. So for the texture sample over here, you want to select the node and make sure it's set to linear color. So in this case it already is. Make sure sampler type is linear color. So this is the material that we're going to use. We can save this one as well and get rid of it. So we have most of the assets set up. Now, first of all, let's make sure that we set up all of the animation. So let's go into the weapons folder and start with the weapon info table. So let's open up that one. And we're gonna, well, let's just add a new row and start fresh. So this is the sniper. So let's change the row name. The display name, I'm gonna name it AX.50, but name it whatever you want, obviously. So for the weapon mesh, we want to select the sniper weapon mesh. The fire time, I got it set at 0.5 seconds, so you can play around with this. It's not auto fire, it's not a shotgun. Then I'm gonna make the clip count 8 and the weapon stock 72. For the fire sound, I'm using the meta sound, so the weapon fire rifle 2. So I don't have too many sounds available, so this will be the same sound as the LMG, unfortunately. The muzzle socket is simply muzzle, and then the shell eject socket is shell eject. So those are the same as from all of the other sniper rifle Lyra weapons. Then the muzzle flash FX is also the Lyra FX, so that's weapon fire. That should be in here. Niagara system weapon fire. The weapon type is going to be primary. Then the HUD icon, we can simply select our AX50 HUD icon. Then we got the maximum damage, so it's a pretty big gun, so I'm going to set it to 250. The weapon class is going to be sniper. And then we have the tracer, so we can set our weapon fire tracer in here, so the normal one. Shell eject is also an existing, oh sorry, that's the mesh for the shell. So I'm gonna select the rifle shell in here, so it's a bit bigger shell. Then we have minimum damage, so I'm gonna set the minimum to 200. And then I'm gonna set the range, so it's a sniper, so make it 4500 maybe, and then 6000. And for the maximum range 7500. So again, you can play around with this stuff. And then the recoil, I'm gonna set minimum to 1 and maximum to 1.5, so it packs a bit of punch. And then the yaw, I'm gonna say something like 0.2 and 0.3. So play around with this stuff obviously, but make sure you have something set up. So that's the weapon info table, and now we also need to set up the animation tables. So for Eli and Quinn, so let's start with Eli. And this is not too bad, so we can simply grab the rifle row in here and duplicate it. So this is going to be the sniper. Make sure you use the same row name as you did in the weapon info table. And now obviously we want to change the mesh in here, so that's going to be the sniper rifle. And then for the character fire montage, I'm gonna use the shotgun one because that packs a little bit more punch than the rifle one. So you can change that one around, shotgun fire. And then this is the Eli data table, so make sure you grab the Eli fire animation. And for all of the other stuff, we can keep the rifle animations, so we don't need to change anything in there. Let's save Eli's data table and do the same thing for Quinn. So let's open it up and duplicate the rifle row. So use the same row name as the weapon info table, and then over here we're going to select the sniper mesh. And for the character fire montage, we're going to set shotgun fire. So this time it's not Eli, so select the Quinn one. And those should be the data tables, good to go. So now we want to do some stuff in our HUD widget to make everything show up. So let's go to the widgets. So let's go to the widgets folder and open our in-game HUD over here. So we want to do the designer part first. I want to add a little bit of background blur if we zoom in, so everything outside of the scope is a little bit blurred. So obviously you can choose if you want to do that, but I'm gonna do it. So we want to go in here and look under special effects, and we have the background blur. So I'm gonna drag that in somewhere at the top over here and make sure that it's not inside of a vertical box or something. So then I'm gonna select it and rename it and make sure that it's a variable so we can enable or disable it. Then for the anchor, I'm gonna set the anchor to full screen over here and set all of the offsets to 0 so it covers the entire screen. Then we want to use some Z order settings. So you can basically see this as layers. The lowest number is the lowest layer and everything higher is stacked on top of it. So if we set the Z order to a higher value, this will be displayed on top of all of the other widgets. So I'm going to set the Z order for the blur to 1, so it will cover all of the other stuff on screen. And then you can set the amount of blur as well, so I'm going to set the blur strength to 2.5 maybe, something like this. Again, play around with it, whatever you like. So it's a variable and we have the strength set. Now in here I'm going to disable the visibility so it's not that annoying in here, but make sure you have it set up. Then we want the actual scope, and for that I'm going to use an overlay. So that's under the panel section. and we want to grab the overlay in here. So instead of using a vertical box or a horizontal box, those will put widgets next to each other or above each other. The overlay puts them on top of each other. So we're going to grab the overlay and let's drag it in here as well. Make sure it's not inside of anything else. And we want this overlay to be a variable. So let's rename it. And this is going to be the overlay scope. And enable is variable in here. Now let's do the anchoring first. So let me grab my notes quickly, make sure I don't mess up in here. So we're going to set the anchor to the center of the screen, and then I'm going to set the position to 0 for both of them. So the size is going to be a little bit bigger than the render target that we have, and to match the size of the actual scope border that we're going to use. So I'm going to use 1075 by 840, sorry. And then the alignment is going to be 0.5, 0.5. So that's the overlay, and for the overlay we want to set the Z order as well. So we want to make sure this Z order is higher than the blur, so this will be on top of the blur. So I'm going to set the Z order to 2. And then for the actual visibility in here, we want to set it to hidden by default. Okay, that should be the settings for the overlay. And then in here, we want to drag in an image. So let's grab an image and drag it inside of the overlay. So the first one is going to be the image for the scope. So let's rename it image scope render target. So it doesn't actually need to be a variable, so we can disable that again. It enabled it when we renamed it. Now for this, let me double check the alignments. So we want to set the alignment to center align horizontally and vertically. And then over here for the brush, we can assign our material render target. So expand the image, and then we're going to look for the material render target sniper scope. And assign that in here. And let me see. So we want to set the image size in here, and I'm going to set that to the size we set in the render target as well. So that's 1000 and then 750. Then I think we are good to go for the render target. Yes, and we want to grab a second image and also drop it inside of the overlay. So that's going to be the border of the scope. So let's select that image as well. And for the brush, we want to set the sniper overlay test image that I added. So you might not have this exact same image, but this is just the border of the scope. So for this one, I'm going to set the size to 1100 by 860. So 1100, 860. So as you can see, this simply covers the edge of the scope and it's nothing too fancy. So those should be all the settings for this one as well. Now for the background blur, we want to set the default visibility to hidden as well. So make sure you go back to the background blur, and the visibility under behavior should be set to hidden. Okay, so that should be the designer part. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. And now let's go to the graph and add a simple function to enable and disable our overlay. So we're going to create a new function. And I'm going to call this toggle sniper scope overlay. No. Close, but no cigar. So in here, we're going to add an input, and that's going to be is overlay visible. So we want to grab a branch and switch on the input first to know if we want to show or hide it. And then we can simply grab our background blur from the variables and also grab our overlay scope. And simply set the visibility. So drag off, set visibility. and if it's true, we want to set both of them to visible, so hook up both of them, and if it's false, we're going to set both of them to hidden. So that should be all we need inside of the HUD. So let's compile and save that one as well. And now all we need is a little bit of setup in our character. So we're going to go to the character folder and open our hero base character. The first thing we need is a scene capture component. So we're going to add a component and we want to add it to our camera. So select the camera component first and then add a scene capture component 2D. Nope. So this one. And we want to set this one up first. So select it, and on the right side we want to lower the field of view. So this will make sure we actually zoom in so you can play around with the number again. I'm gonna set it to 12 for now, so as a good starting point. And then we want to scroll down, and for the texture target over here, we want to select our sniper scope render target. So select that one. And that's all we need to do for the actual component. Now we want to go inside of the event graph. And first of all, we're going to start at event begin play. So let's look for begin play. So we added a component in here, and because that's just added to the list of components, that will be added to every instance of the character. And we only need it on the local instances of the character because those are the only ones that actually have a HUD to display it on. So what we're going to do in begin play, after the is locally controlled branch, we're going to grab the scene capture component and simply destroy the component for every instance that's not locally controlled. So hook it up to the destroy component node for the interactable detection sphere, or just add one and get rid of it for every non-local player. Then if we are a local player, we're gonna start by deactivating the component. So if we are starting the game, it's not active. So grab the scene capture component and we need to actually set, let me double check, set active. So you want to drag off here and set active and make sure it's not active. So keep it disabled, and this part goes into the locally controlled is true branch. So that's begin play. Then we can set up our ADS stuff. So simply if we press the ADS button, we're gonna check what weapon we are wielding and if we want to display the overlay. So we should have an input action in here somewhere, and enhanced input action ADS. So this is our ADS event, and at the end of this we can simply continue. Yeah, so we're simply going to grab a branch in here and hook up both of the nodes. And then we can check what weapon we're wielding. So we're going to grab our weapon loadout. And we want to get our active weapon index. So let's get a copy of our active weapon index and plug that in here. And we can simply compare it to our sniper rifle. So is equal to, and then type in the row name of the sniper. So this is our condition. And if this is true, then we want to grab our scene capture component. And we're going to set active again. So drag off here, set active. This goes in the true bin. And we can simply plug in our isAds boolean to activate or deactivate it. So let's grab isAds and plug it into the new active. So this will activate the capture component, and then we want to grab our in-game HUD. And from here we want to toggle the sniper scope overlay. And again we can simply hook up our ADS boolean to make this work properly. So this is actually all we need. Yeah, so we can compile and save it and have a little look. So I'm simply going to test this single player. This is all local, so this doesn't really involve any replication. So if you just added a sniper rifle, then you also want to add a pickup for the sniper rifle, by the way. So I didn't do that. So let me do that quickly off screen and then make sure that we can test all of this. Okay, so now we should be good to go. So in the pickup weapon info table, I just added a pickup for the sniper. Make sure you set it up correctly, and then you want to add the actual pickup to the level. So in the viewport, and then set it up in the details panel to make sure you add the actual sniper rifle, and then you should be good to go. So let's go back to the main menu and see if this is working. So this time we have a sniper rifle, and let's see if the scope is working as well. So if I ADS, I get my scope on screen. There's one thing I missed, and that's the crosshair that's disappearing, so we can fix that. And as you can see right now, if you move around, the sensitivity is quite high, so we can do a little something to adjust that as well. So let's dive into those two things. First of all, let's do the crosshair. So we want to go back to the widget and then open up the in-game HUD. So it's not really too hard. We actually want to grab the canvas panel in here. That's the crosshair. So the canvas panel has 4 images in it, and those are the 4 little images that make up the crosshair. So we want to set the canvas panel Z order and make sure that it's equal or higher to the overlay. So I'm simply going to set it to 2 as well. And then it should be, well, let me just set it to 3. So we have the overlay set at 2. So if we set it at 2 and it's above or below it in the list over here, then it might still be covered up. So if we set it to 3, it will always be on top. So that should fix the crosshair. And now to fix the sensitivity, we can do something pretty simple. So if we go to our enhanced input action for looking. So on the graph, look for enhanced input action look. And we can simply add a multiplier to these values. So for example, let's right click or let's drag off here and do promote to variable. So we can call this something like our input action look input multiplier. Input multiplier. And then in here, we don't want to set it, but we want to multiply this value with the multiplier. So we're going to drag off the axis value, multiply, plug in the result to the add controller input and make sure you multiply it with the multiplier amount. And then do the same thing for the pitch input. So hook up the input value and pass it on to the node. And then for the default value of this multiplier, we want to make sure we set it to 1. So compile the blueprint, set the default value to 1. And then we can go back to our enhanced input action ADS. And over here, if we are not switching to a sniper rifle, we can grab the input action multiplier and actually set it back to 1. And if we are switching to the sniper rifle, so at the end over here, we can lower the multiplier so that will smooth out the aim a little bit. And then you also want to determine if we are ADSing or not. So we can drag off here and do a select float again. So for the pick A, we can plug in our ADS. So if we are ADSing, we're using the A value. So I'm going to set it to 0.5. And if we are not ADSing, I'm going to set it back to 1. So now we should have the sensitivity fixed and should have our crosshair fixed as well. So let's have a little look. And I should have the weapon in my inventory. No, I don't. So then I'm just gonna pick it up. So we have the crosshair on screen and we have a much more decent sensitivity to work with, so you can play around with the multiplier to actually increase or decrease it as you like. So we added a sniper rifle with an actual scope. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and if you want to get the project files or the weapons that I made, you can become a YouTube member or a Patreon, and you will get access to the files in the Discord. So thanks for watching everybody, talk to you later, bye bye.